I never imagined the man I once kissed beneath Eiffel Tower lights would one day sit across from me in court, grinning like he was watching a game show. But there he was, my ex-husband, Maxwell Preston. Dear viewers, welcome to our channel. Subscribe to receive more stories every day. Polished, smug, confident, draped in a custom-tailored suit, as if we weren't sitting in divorce court but on a red carpet. His mistress, fiancée now, sat just behind him in pearl earrings that used to be mine. Every seat in the gallery was filled. The press had caught wind of this one. The headlines had already made the rounds. Billionaire tech CEO sues ex-wife for breaking prenup. What they hadn't printed, at least not yet, was the truth. That I hadn't broken the prenup. That I hadn't cheated. That Maxwell was lying through his perfect teeth. I took a slow breath and tried to calm my hands. The courtroom was air-conditioned, but I felt like I was burning. Not from nerves, but from betrayal. I hadn't planned to fight him. I'd signed the divorce papers quietly, accepted the house in Tahoe, and walked away with my name. But Maxwell wasn't satisfied. He filed a motion claiming I'd broken our prenuptial agreement by having an affair, which would, under the terms we'd signed, force me to pay him back nearly $12 million in marriage benefits. It was absurd, delusional, except now it wasn't just a claim. It was a full-blown case. And every person I thought was neutral, they were lining up to testify against me. It started with Cassidy, my old yoga instructor. I saw Lana leaving a restaurant with a man. They looked intimate. The crowd in the gallery murmured. Then came Rob, our former driver. She had me pick her up from the Mondrian twice in 1 week. Always alone when I dropped her off. Never alone when I picked her up. And then came the housekeeper. I saw wine glasses in the bedroom. 2. Each one was like a knife twisting deeper. Maxwell sat back, arms folded, eyes narrowed in pleasure. Beside him Bianca, the mistress, dabbed at her eyes like she was the victim. But the worst blow. Blair, my best friend. We had been roommates before I met Max. She'd introduced us. She was the maid of honor at our wedding. And there she was, walking up to the witness stand in nude heels and a silk blouse, pretending she hadn't ghosted me the minute I moved out. I love Lana, she said carefully. But she started to change in the last year. She stopped returning my calls. She was secretive. I asked if something was wrong. She said, "Don't ask questions." I didn't want to believe it. But she was pulling away from everyone. I couldn't even look at her. Pulling away. No, I was suffocating. I was trying to survive a marriage built on gaslighting, distance, and calculated affection. Maxwell didn't need to scream or threaten. He just vanished. Emotionally, physically, night after night. And every time I asked where he'd been, he had an excuse so clean it was surgical. Now he was weaponizing the absence he'd created. My lawyer, Donovan Park, stood calmly beside me, flipping through his notes like we weren't being theatrically dismantled. His expression never changed. Focused. After the third day of testimony, I snapped. "He's winning," I whispered to Donovan, grabbing his arm in the hallway. "They believe him. Everyone believes him. Even Claire. She didn't say you cheated," he said quietly. "She said you pulled away. It's hearsay, not evidence. It's enough to make me look guilty." He didn't answer. Just tilted his head at me like he was trying to calculate the exact moment I'd lost faith in myself. "We signed that prenup," I continued. "You said it was airtight. So how is he flipping it on me?" "We signed the prenup," he echoed. "But did you read all of it?" Pause. "What?" Donovan's eyes twinkled. "Let's just say, there's something we're not showing yet. Timing matters, Lana. Trust me." It was strange, walking into a courtroom and not recognizing half the people who claimed to know you. Journalists, former acquaintances. 2 women I'd seen once at a charity auction. Bianca's mother, who had the audacity to glare at me like I'd somehow ruined her daughter's life. I sat through more testimony. Emails were read out loud. Photos were shown. One of them was me laughing at a cafe table with my cousin's husband. just the two of us. Maxwell's lawyer insisted it was inappropriate. They didn't know it was an emergency lunch to talk about his sister's addiction relapse, something we'd both sworn not to share. And now it was being twisted into evidence of an affair. I should have crumbled. Should have begged the judge for mercy. But I didn't. I sat tall, my hands clasped in my lap, my mouth set in steel. Because if Donovan had even half the confidence he claimed to have, then something big was coming. We were in Paris. Maxwell had just closed his first international acquisition. We'd taken a long weekend, and he surprised me with a rooftop dinner under a string of lights and a violinist who played Claire de Lune. Felt like a movie. "I want us to protect each other," he'd said, pulling a slim folder from his jacket pocket. "Just in case." It was the prenup. I'd blinked at it, still high on wine and starlight. "Now, just for peace of mind," he smiled. "I love you, Lana. But we both come from complicated families. Money changes people. If we ever part, I want it to be clean. Fair." I didn't argue. I didn't read it closely. Just trusted him the way he needed me to. Because of course he wouldn't screw me over. We were in love. That kind of love that made you stupid. Sign. And that was the night he won his first battle without lifting a finger. The judge called for a recess. I stepped outside and finally let out the breath I'd been holding since Monday. "You need to eat," Donovan said, handing me a protein bar. I took it but didn't unwrap it. "They think I'm a liar," I murmured. He looked at me steadily. "And they'll regret it." That night, as I sat in my hotel room scrolling through old photos, something shifted. I found an image. From a ski trip to Aspen 3 years earlier. Maxwell was helping Bianca into a rental car. It looked innocent enough except for the timestamp. It was months before they claimed they'd met. And right there, frozen in pixels, was his hand resting too long on her hip. I sent it to Donovan. His reply came in 6 words. "That's not the only one." The energy in the room had changed. Maxwell's side was gloating. They were preparing for victory. His lawyer was already smiling before he stood. "Your Honor, we request that the prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause be enforced in full, given the substantial circumstantial evidence." Donovan stood slowly, interrupted him mid-sentence. "Your Honor," he said, calm and clear, "we'd like to submit new evidence and invoke Section 9B of the prenuptial agreement." The courtroom hushed. The judge looked up. "Section 9B. Donovan nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. It's titled Reverse Clause." Even Maxwell looked confused. Bianca leaned in to whisper something, but he didn't respond. "Proceed," the judge said, intrigued. Donovan handed over the documents and paused just long enough for the tension to stretch tight as piano wire. Then he spoke 2 words. Words I will never forget. He cheated. There are moments when time seems to stop. Donovan's voice didn't tremble. It didn't rise. It didn't need to. Just 2 words. He cheated. They fell like a hammer onto the courtroom floor. Could hear a gasp. Several, actually. The gallery started to buzz, and the judge banged her gavel once. Not to scold, but to refocus. She looked at Donovan over her glasses. "Explain," she said. He nodded, calm as ever. "Your Honor, Section 9B of the prenuptial agreement outlines a reverse clause, one that nullifies the infidelity penalty if Mr. Preston engaged in extramarital conduct first." Maxwell shifted in his seat. His lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but Donovan raised a hand. "I'm not finished," he said smoothly. "It also states that, in the event Mr. Preston was the first to breach fidelity, all financial protections are reversed, meaning he becomes liable for restitution to Mrs. Hartley." The courtroom went silent. The judge sat straighter. "That clause exists." "It does, Your Honor. It's on page 12 of the agreement." He handed her a copy. Maxwell's lawyer turned red. "This is absurd. That clause was buried in a paragraph that—" "Buried?" Donovan's eyes glinted. "You mean the one you helped draft?" My ex-husband's jaw locked. That was the moment I realized he hadn't read the prenup either. We were in New York, seated across from a lawyer in a midtown office. Maxwell's father, Theodore Preston, a man who made cold seem like a personality, was there too. He insisted on the prenup, said it was necessary for optics. I was told a version would be sent to my legal representative. I didn't have one then. Max offered to connect me with one of his family's attorneys, a man named Chambers, but I declined. Something about the arrangement felt off. Instead, I hired my own quiet counsel, a woman named Annette Lang. She was older, sharp, and wore glasses that looked like they'd seen 1,000 mistakes walk through her door. She'd read the document. She'd made suggestions. One of them was the inclusion of Section 9B, an addendum she called a fairness clause. I remembered her words. Men like him don't expect to lose. But if they do, they don't like finding out it's in writing. Donovan presented the next exhibit, a series of time-stamped photographs. The one I'd sent him, Maxwell helping Bianca into a car in Aspen, wasn't even the strongest. Another image appeared on the overhead screen, a dinner receipt, for two, at a private chef's table in Barcelona, from over 4 years ago. Donovan spoke again. Mr. Preston claimed under oath that he met Ms. Bianca Fairchild during a corporate merger 2 years ago. But this receipt from 4 years prior shows them dining together alone. A dinner valued at over $2,000. He clicked again. Another image. A private jet manifest with both their names. And the kicker. The destination, Maldives. The date. The weekend of our 5th wedding anniversary. You could hear people murmuring. Bianca's face flushed. Maxwell tried to maintain composure, but his knee was bouncing. Donovan let it all sit before delivering the final nail. We also have testimony from a former employee at the villa in Malle. She identified both Mr. Preston and Ms. Fairchild and confirmed that they stayed under a different surname to avoid public attention. We have her affidavit, photo ID, and a recorded statement. Silence. And then the judge turned slowly toward Maxwell. Is there any part of this you wish to dispute? He looked cornered, like a fox that just realized it was in a trap of its own making. His lawyer stood, stammered, and requested a recess. Denied. The judge turned to Donovan. Continue. I sat on a bench, heart still pounding. Bianca had stormed out the back in trance with sunglasses covering her face, but not the shame. Max was nowhere to be seen. Donovan sat beside me. You're winning, he said flatly. I didn't feel like I was. I felt exhausted, shaken, but also lighter. He never loved me, I whispered. Donovan didn't answer right away. Love and power get tangled, he finally said. You loved him, but he loved control. I thought back to the nights Max had come home late, always with an excuse. The way he made me feel like I was the irrational one if I asked questions. How he smiled in public but barely spoke at home. I'd gaslit myself for years, convinced the distance was my fault. Now I knew better. Maxwell's team pivoted. If they couldn't prove I cheated, they'd try to claim the prenup clause was invalid. They tried to argue that I hid Section 9B, that it was added unfairly, that he never consented to it. But Donovan had come prepared. He brought in Annette Lang. She walked in like a retired general, elegant, composed, unshakable. On the stand, she recalled in detail the negotiation of the prenup. She produced the signed emails, the draft versions, the final version, dated and acknowledged. Did Mr. Preston review the final draft? The opposing counsel asked, trying to poke holes. Annette smiled. I can't speak to whether he read it, but he signed it, and his initials appear on every page, including the one containing Section 9B. They had no comeback, no loophole, no misprint. It was real. It was binding. And it had been waiting like a buried landmine for just this moment. Donovan stood for closing statements. He didn't yell. He didn't pace. He didn't dramatize. He simply told the truth. That I'd married Maxwell in good faith. That I'd honored our vows. That while he was traveling the world with someone else, I was home, defending our brand, managing our foundation, keeping up appearances. That the woman they'd painted as cold and calculating was the one holding a sinking ship together. And that, in the end, justice wasn't about loyalty. It was about proof. I sat alone in the hallway outside the courtroom. A reporter approached me, but I ignored her. My phone was buzzing with messages. Old friends suddenly remembering I existed. Then Bianca walked by. She didn't speak. She didn't even look at me. But I watched her walk. Fast, tight-lipped, as if she was trying to outrun the shame. And maybe for the first time, I pitied her. Everyone rose. She read through the findings. Ruled that Maxwell had, in fact, violated the fidelity clause of the prenuptial agreement. And that Section 9B was valid, enforceable, and fully applicable. Therefore, the court ordered Mr. Preston to pay restitution in the amount of $15 million to Mrs. Hartley, plus cover all her legal fees. A collective pause. And then the gavel came down. It was done. Maxwell caught up with me at the steps. "You think you've won," he said bitterly. "Turn. I know I have. You'll regret this. You've ruined me." I met his eyes and said the words I'd been holding back for years. "You ruined yourself the day you thought I'd never fight back." He scoffed and walked off, this time alone. "You think you'll feel triumphant. You imagine that once the verdict is read, once justice is served, you'll throw your hands up and laugh in victory. That the pain will lift, and you'll feel whole again. But that's not how it works. After the gavel fell and the courtroom emptied, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt exhausted, like I'd survived a storm but lost the house. Maxwell was right about one thing. I hadn't just won a trial. I had ruined him, his image, his empire, his carefully curated persona. But what he never understood was, I never wanted revenge. I just wanted my voice back. I was packing to leave Tahoe for good. The house was too big, too quiet, too full of memories that weren't real. I needed somewhere that didn't remind me of red wine stains on marble counters and nights waiting by the window for headlights that never came. Donovan called. "The wire transfer cleared," he said. "He paid." I didn't say anything at first. "You're officially richer than him now," he added with a small laugh. "Is that why you took the case?" "No," he said. "I took it because your eyes didn't match your voice the first time we met." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "You spoke like someone trying to be calm. But your eyes looked like someone screaming underwater." I sat with that for a long moment. He was right. It arrived by courier. No return address. Just a cream-colored envelope and my name in cursive across the front. Inside a single page. "Lana, I know you have no reason to believe me, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know something that Maxwell never told you. He didn't fall in love with me during your marriage. He was already in love with me before it began. He only married you because of the clause in his father's will, that to take over the company, he had to be married to someone the board would approve of. You were always the safe, respectable choice. You weren't his backup plan. You were his strategy. I stayed silent because I wanted him to choose me. He never did. Till now. And now, I'm not sure I want him. I reread it 3 times. The words blurred. Not because I was heartbroken, but because I finally understood. I had never lost to Bianca. I'd been betrayed by a man who saw people as tools. That same week, I received a call from Annette Lang, my prenup attorney. "Lana," she said, "you need to come see something." I met her at her office. She handed me a folder, old, yellowed, sealed. This came from Theodore Preston's estate lawyer. Apparently, Theodore left a letter with instructions to only give it to you if the prenup was ever enforced in court. Opened it. Inside was a single-page letter. Cold. Straight to the point. To Mrs. Lana Hartley. If you are reading this, then my son has failed to live up to the integrity I once hoped he'd find. I did not believe in love, not as a prerequisite for marriage, but I believed in honor. Maxwell has brilliance, but brilliance without discipline is destruction. I saw potential in you to keep him anchored. I hoped he'd learn from you. But if you're reading this, he didn't. So I leave you this note as acknowledgement. You were not chosen by accident. You were the best part of a plan he never deserved. Theodore Preston. I sat back in the chair. So that was it. The reverse clause wasn't just a legal formality. It was Theodore's insurance policy. He knew his son, knew what he was capable of, and knew that if I ever needed to protect myself, I'd find it in writing. He hadn't trusted his son, but in some strange backwards way, he'd trusted me. I sold the Tahoe house, donated half of the $15 million to a women's legal aid foundation, opened an office in New York under the name Clause 9. It offers support to women blindsided by manipulative contracts, legal intimidation, and financial abuse. We have attorneys, therapists, and accountants. One of our first clients said, "I didn't know I could fight back." I smiled and told her, "Neither did I." It was at a gala, the kind of event I used to attend with Maxwell. He was there, alone. We locked eyes briefly. He looked thinner, still polished, but something in him had cracked. He approached slowly. "I heard about Clause 9, he said, sipping something amber. "Of course you did." He hesitated. "You were always better than me." I raised an eyebrow. "Not better. Just not afraid anymore." He tried to smile. Failed. "You know I didn't think you'd read the fine print." "That's the thing about me, Max," I said. "You always assumed I didn't read the fine print. But you never realized I wrote some of it." I turned and walked away. They all testified against me. They said I was cold, distant, maybe even unfaithful. But none of them knew the truth hiding in the margins, in the footnotes, in the 12-point font buried beneath years of silence and gaslighting. 2 words changed everything, not just in court, but in me. Because the moment my lawyer said, "He cheated," I stopped being the defendant and became the woman who knew her own worth. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. If you like this story, please subscribe to our channel to receive more stories every day. Share with us what you think of this story and tell us where you're watching from.